I constantly get asked the tools and tips and tricks that millionaires are using. And one tool that I highly recommend, and it's recommended by millionaires too, is something that will help you run your payroll. And I know it's like, it's so annoying to have to do payroll. Well, now you can do it in typically around 11 minutes with Gusto. They're actually simple, easy. They'll file and pay your taxes for you. Your W-2s will all be done and you don't have to worry about it. How amazing would that be? Plus, they have an HR expert on call. So you can call them and be able to get your HR questions answered. Plus they have benefits like 401k and health benefits for any budget. And I know I get asked that question all the time. So go check it out. We've actually partnered with them. And so when you run your first payroll through them, they'll give you 3 months free. Just go to gusto.com/EM and check it out for yourself.
Potent advice and inspiration from real self-made millionaires. Welcome to The Eventual Millionaire with your host, Jaime Masters.
Hey, it's Jaime, and welcome to a selects edition of Eventual Millionaire. This is where we go back and find the best of the best, the ones that you loved from the past 6-7 years. We've been doing this a long time, and there's some amazing interviews with amazing guests that you have not seen yet. So we are bringing them back. It is the Selects edition. Let us know what you think, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Eventual Millionaire. I'm Jaime Masters, and today on the show, I finally have Steve Olsher. I'm really excited because I feel like we've known each other for a ridiculously long period of time, and yet we don't. So he's founder of liquor.com, but also is a reinvention expert, and he just started coming out. You guys need to pay attention to this. It's called New Media Summit. You can check it out at newmediasummit.net. Thanks so much for coming on the show today, Steve.
Well, thanks so much for finally having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
It's my fault. Totally my fault. It's hard. You can't walk up to people and go, are you a millionaire? I know we're friends, but
Right.
Is that cool to do? So
I will say this, though, all things being equal, I haven't had you on Reinvention Radio either. So
Good point.
we're going to have to fix that, too.
Thank you for making me feel better on my own show. I do appreciate that. Tell us a little of the background, and then I want to move into talking about New Media Summit, especially because a lot of the people listening love all the podcasters we were just talking about.
Yeah, so background, serial entrepreneur, one of those people that's just kind of been wired in the DNA to try to scratch a couple of dimes together and make a quarter. I mean, going way back, picking up the shovel and shoveling sidewalks and driveways. And you name it. I think I've done it over the years, even sold speakers out of the back of a van at one point. But they were good speakers. I will say that. But yes, I was that guy for at least one brief moment in time. But yeah, launched really early online. CompuServe's electronic mall in 1993. Built one of the first fully functioning commerce sites in 95. That actually became liquor.com when I picked up that domain in 98. But from nightclubs and DJing and writing and speaking and real estate development, hasn't been a whole lot of things that I haven't done over the years.
Because serial entrepreneurs tend to get bored, so they hop onto every other thing that will make them money later, right? It sounds like you've got a crazy trajectory, especially way back when. That's nuts. Okay, so lead us up to now. Let's talk about New Media Summit for right now, and then I want to go back and circle back because you've been in this game a ridiculously long time. So tell everybody what it is first.
So New Media Summit is an event that was really born out of demand in terms of what I had been seeing here in this new media landscape. Lots of folks have the opportunities to connect with traditional media type people, and there are events that focus on radio and TV, but there wasn't really an event where the average everyday coach and author or speaker or business owner could meet one-on-one with the world's top podcasters and pitch them on who they are and what they do, and leave the event with bookings in hand. So we decided to combine that premise and that core promise of the event with traditional education around, really how do you leverage the power of new media and how do you monetize the visibility you'll inevitably receive when you appear on the world's top shows, with this opportunity to really break bread with the world's top podcasters. No iron curtains, everybody hangs out together. And we did it for the first time in September. And we sold it out fairly quickly. And so with demand being there, we will be doing it again and again.
See, that's amazing. And podcasters, to me, are so nice. I know a lot of them. They're really nice. They're actually really cool to get to know in general. Tell me a little bit more about, though, because a lot of people that come on the show, they get money, right? Eventually, long term, right?
Yep.
But short term, people don't understand, especially on the smaller shows and stuff like that, what to do to really make it be fruitful for them. So some people will
Yeah.
go on podcasts and be like, yeah, it was fun, but I didn't get anything from it. So give us some tips and tricks. And if you're a host of a show, or if you're not a host of a show and you're on somebody's show, how can we make it actually fruitful and not a waste of time on either
It's
side?
interesting, right? Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people think very, very short term. And having been in business now for 25 plus years, and having created 4 multi-million-dollar businesses from scratch, I'm always thinking long term. And to me, it really boils down to what's your profit path. In other words, what is the last step on the path that you want someone to take with you? And so for a lot of folks, they don't think past the initial lead magnet. I mean, it's just, let me get them out of my mailing list. Okay, that's all well and good, but then what, right? So I really do think that you have to start with what the profit path is for you and understand what that last step is on the path that you want someone to take, and really seed what you are offering throughout pretty much that entire conversation without being blatant about it. But certainly their takeaway should be, yeah, this is someone I could probably learn something from. Let me figure out if I want to get into this person's ecosystem and really bounce from this world of whatever that platform of visibility is into their world, so that I can begin developing a relationship with them.
Well, how can they do that? Because I mean, you probably had this too, where you have guests that are just promoting lead magnet. This is what we do, like promote. And then that sort of, it isn't always a good thing, right? So how do we do it so it's easy and happy, and people are doing it because they are eager to sign up and be a part of your ecosystem?
Yeah, and frankly, we already did it. And so what did we do? I mean, we talked about the New Media Summit without my saying, hey, go here and buy a ticket. It's just, we talked about visibility. We talked about being able to connect with the podcast. We talked about, really being able to develop meaningful relationships with people who you admire and have been basically around the block and gotten to where it is that you already want to get to, right? That you want to get to. So this is a perfect example. I mean, if we had, let's say, dropped into a story, right, of someone who had attended the summit and what they got out of it, that would be another way of doing it without being blatant. So stories are always really good, but the other thing is just creating desire without being obnoxious about it.
I feel like that is a skill that some people have learned and some people have not, though, right?
Not only should you feel that way, it is in fact true. It is very much the truth. Yes.
So how did you get good at that specifically? Because you're good at it. So how did you get good at it?
I will say this. I have not had like any formal NLP training or anything of that nature. So I'm not. There are people who are much, much, much better at it than I am, for sure. And giving credit where credit is due. I mean, what I will say is that there are a lot of folks out there who show you what not to do. And I think if you're a smart enough person and you recognize what just kind of feels yucky to you, then you recognize, hey, this isn't the way that I want to be. And so, fortunately, a lot of people have paved a path for us with crap that we just don't want to step in. And so that's how I look at it. Is what do other people do that you just don't like, you don't admire, that just doesn't feel good to you, and put your own spin on it in a way that allows you to go to bed at night. Look yourself in the mirror and go, yeah, this was a clean day. Like, I feel good about it. I don't feel icky or anything, right? So, yeah, I think it's just simply a matter of understanding what your style is. And there are people who are much better salespeople than I am, for sure. Bar none, I am not going to sit here and say that I'm the world's best salesperson. But what I am able to do is to create what my friend Sam Horn calls intrigue, in terms of being able to pass the eyebrow test. Are you familiar with Sam Horn's work? The eyebrow test?
I want to know what the eyebrow test is.
Sam is great. And she actually spoke at the first event that I did under the Internet Profits Live brand, PROPHETS. And so we had done a number of Internet Profits Live events, and over the years we had people like Lewis Howes and Russell Brunson and Mike Filsame and Armin Morin. And
do you have Jason Van Orden too? Because I remember him telling me he was speaking there. Yeah.
Jason Van Orden spoke there, Pat Flynn, so on and so forth. And so Sam spoke at the first Internet Profits Live, and she took people through the exercise of the eyebrow test, which basically means within the first 60 seconds of talking to someone, you really want to be able to create that intrigue and get them to raise their eyebrows and go, what is that? And so the idea there is really just to create that intrigue. And so now that we've talked about it, and assuming that you're talking to the right audience, and they are the perfect ideal candidates for your products, programs, and services, simply by mentioning what it is and seeding that in a unique way, you can get them to raise their eyebrows and pass that eyebrow test and create that degree of intrigue. So I think intrigue is a big part of it.
I love that she labeled it the eyebrow test, because we've heard of like the elevator speech and stuff like that. That makes it sound so pitiful. But when I used to go around, I would say that I'm a business coach. People were like, okay, great, good to know. I'm a this, right? And then I started going, I interview millionaires, and everyone's like, oh, really? Tell me more. I know, like that makes perfect logical sense. So it's funny too, because you also have a best-selling book in sort of a different subset. So I kind of want to talk about this because I feel like my audience would be really interested in it. So tell us about your book and what you actually do as a reinvention, amazing human being that you are.
Well, thank you for that. And if you ask my wife, I'm not so sure how many of those adjectives apply, but at least one or two of them. But the book you're talking about that I put on the New York Times list in 2013 is called What is Your What? Discover the One Amazing Thing You Were Born to Do. And so What is Your What is really about helping people identify the three elements of the What is Your What framework, which are your core gift, which is the one thing that's really in your DNA, right? I mean, it's as I like to say, your what has chosen you. It's not that which you have chosen. So it's a matter of understanding what your core gift is, the vehicle that you will use to share that gift, and then the people that you're most compelled to serve. And what I find is that for most business owners, they may have clarity around one of the three pieces of the What is Your What framework, but very few have clarity around all three.
Okay, that's exactly why I wanted to bring it up, because it's not like, oh, you find all of those pieces and then you build your business. It's like we cobble together enough that makes some money and you go forward and you're like, now what? And so can you walk us through how you find that stuff, or can we know what we already have so we know what we're looking for next?
Yeah, and so look, step number one really in being able to discover what your what is, and for people who ask, hey, what is it that I do? What I tell them is I help people discover, share, and monetize their what, right? So to me, it all really begins with understanding how do you answer that question of what is your what, right? And so step number one, though, is really just turning that light switch on, where the light switch represents awareness that I even have a what. Most people don't even have that awareness. I mean, these aren't conversations we have around the dinner table. School doesn't do a great job of teaching us about how to discover how we're naturally wired to excel. And even some of the existing modalities are good, but they often leave you with more questions than answers, which is really where I was as well when I started trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I'm really good at, and how am I naturally wired to excel? And after going through the Myers-Briggs and the What Color's Your Parachutes and the, all the strengths finders and all of those sort of things, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're all great modalities, but again, left me with more questions than answers and really didn't get me to the point where I felt like I could hit the ground running. And so step number one is absolutely to turn that light switch on and just be committed to figuring out what it is and make that shift from being awake to really being alive. And a lot of people will go through life without ever making that shift of going from being awake to being alive.
Mm. And that's so sad. Thankfully, most of the people, it is, right? Awareness first, awareness the first step. Maybe it's good that some people don't understand where they are. But when we're looking at assessments and stuff like that, I agree with you. I love every assessment, and they're all slices. So how do we add up all of the pie and actually determine that one thing? Because usually you're pretty good at quite a few things, especially if you're amazing and listening to the show, right? They're pretty good. So it's hard to pick like one what.
Yeah. And it's interesting because if I were to subtitle the book now, I think I would probably change it from Discover the One Amazing Thing You Were Born to Do to probably Discover the One Amazing Thing You Were Born to Do for now. right? Because life is more fluid, life is more organic, life evolves.
Hmm.
And so what I've become really clear on is that your gift that remains constant throughout your entire life. And let me give you an example. So an example of a gift could be something like communicating. It could be something like teaching. It could be something like healing,
Hmm.
or entertaining, or enrolling, or protecting, et cetera, et cetera. And so that is going to stay pretty much the same throughout your adult life. Now, you can ignore it, right? And you can do other things that don't necessarily completely leverage the gift that you've been given. But I think at the end of the day, we wake up and we go, yeah, I feel out of alignment. Like there's just something incongruent about what it is that I'm doing on a day to day. And sometimes that does reflect back on the gift where you're truly not using the core gift that you've been given. But other times it can reflect the vehicle that you use, the primary vehicle that you use, right? So for you, Jimmy, I mean, it could be argued that podcasting is the primary vehicle that you use to share your gift. But it could be something else too, right? Depending on where you are in your career. For others examples, if you're a healer, if healing is your core gift, then perhaps massage is the primary vehicle that you use to share that gift. But ultimately, that can change, as can the third piece of the equation, which are the people that you're most compelled to serve. Because as your business matures and as you mature, and also as new things enter into your life and as you have different experiences. I mean, that could be something horrible, like finding yourself a part of the Me Too movement, or being diagnosed with cancer or something like that. Or it could be something wonderful, like going to a retreat and just having this incredible experience, or meeting someone new who just opens your eyes in ways that you just frankly, you never saw the world in that way. So once you understand what your core gift is, you can then give yourself the freedom of really acknowledging the fact that that vehicle that you use to share that gift and the people that you're most compelled to serve, those things might change over time.
I love the permission that's in that too, because a lot of people are like, oh, I have to find my purpose and then I have to stick with that purpose till I'm dead, right? And that's
Yeah.
not really, it's sort of the purpose or the strength, like you're talking about, your what stays the same, but there's lots of modalities that you can shift up and still be interested, especially for entrepreneurs that are little shiny object syndrome also, and they want to be serial entrepreneurs. So now
Yeah.
I'm really curious though, and I loved how this totally had the eyebrow test at the beginning when you were just talking about it. I'm like, oh, what's that? Notice my eyebrows raising, which is always a good thing. What is your what?
Yeah, and again, I know it seems like a cop out, but truly, my what has evolved into helping people discover, share, and monetize theirs, because that's it's really where I find the most joy. And what I also have found is that just based on my ability to communicate with people of all ages, that I truly am able to meet people where they are. So
Hmm.
there's some folks who literally just need to figure out what their what is and are at the beginning of that profit path. And so if that's the case, then the book is a great place to start, or the reinvention workshop online course would be a great place to start, right? And so meeting them there. But if they're a little bit farther down the path and maybe they need to move towards being a better marketer, or gaining more visibility or monetization around what they have identified their what to be, then given my experience and what I've been able to do over the years, I'm able to meet them there as well. So it encompasses people at different parts and different points of their life, but really discovering, sharing, and monetizing their what is what I have found my what to truly be.
That's awesome. Okay, tell me a little bit more though, because you've got, like you said, from the beginning all the way to the end, right? And when you have the whole trajectory and the whole path, that's a lot of different subsets, avatars in different areas of their journey, right? And so when I chat with people, and I've talked to Pat and I've talked to a bunch of other people about this, picking all of them is different than picking a subsection. So is there one subsection that you like of the journey? Do you like working with beginners better? Do you like working with the business owners that are already in business and trying to like cobble back together and put it back into alignment, right? So
Yeah.
that way they're on track?
Yeah, I mean, if I've got one group of people that I find really need me the most, and I enjoy working with the most, it would be those that I would say are in a point of their life where they're looking for what I refer to as the golden shift.
Okay.
And that golden shift is a shift from prominence, where they've had something going on in their life of prominence, whether it's as a CEO or an entrepreneur, or I mean, you name it, and that shift into relevance, where they wake up and they go, geez, I've done great in this arena of my life. But it's like, that life wheel where it's like 1 to 10 in this, 1 to 10 in that. And
I
what you
literally
got one
have
of
it
those life
right
wheels.
next to me.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
right
they,
next
they
to
got
me.
like one of those
Hilarious.
like bumpy, kind of wheels, like, this is all good, this sucks, this is all good, this, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. So those who are looking to make that golden shift and go from prominence to relevance are the people that I really enjoy working with the most.
Okay, tell me what you help them with. So give me some of that, because there's probably a lot of people that are listening that are successful, especially in corporate. I work with I made 6 figures in corporate. There's a lot of people that listen that are big, right? And importance in corporate and going, I'm still not happy. Now what? So what do
Yeah.
you walk them through? Of course, finding your what, I'm assuming, is the very first thing, right?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
what?
And that's, yeah. And frankly, you'd be amazed at how many people wake up 20 years later and they go, holy hell, how did I get here? Like,
Yeah.
what happened? And so you'd be amazed at how many people, even who have done really, really well in a corporate like career or entrepreneurial setting, got down a path where they're just like, I started out with this one vision, or using Simon Sinek's terms, I had this why in terms of what it is that I was going to do. And then somebody said, hey, I'll pay you 10 grand if you do this. And you're like, yeah, okay, 10 grand sounds really, really good. And 3 years later, it's like they have this company doing that, which was just kind of like this side gig. So the point only being, you'd be amazed at how many people have had really good careers, either as an entrepreneur or solopreneur or in the corporate environment, but really haven't stopped to take the time to figure out who they truly are and what truly puts fire in their soul. So for me, it always begins with, let's identify what truly puts fire in your soul.
So once they actually, because I'm assuming you walk them through the whole path of actually finding this, right? And it feels very core. What changes in their life? Because fire in your soul sounds amazing, but the stark difference of waking up going like, I don't feel like waking up, to I feel amazing. Like, is that what it
Yeah.
is? I feel amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it really just boils down to, you'll find that you just don't have enough hours in the day to get done what you've got to get done. The things that used to bother you carry a lot less weight. And, and the truth is that it's kind of woo-woo, right? I mean, the idea of fire in your soul and whatnot. But it really just boils down to having a reason for being. Yeah, and I think people just need a core reason for being. Otherwise, they feel, number one, very alone. Number two, they feel like they're just simply chasing commodity-driven opportunities, where they're doing something simply because the money is the outcome. And number three, when they sit down and really do think about how it is that they want to be remembered, most people, when given the choice of having the opportunity to create something that impacts not only those who share this lifetime with them, but also those of lifetimes to come, will choose that option all day long. But it's it's not as easy as a lot of people would think to be able to create something that has generational impact.
I want to dive deeper into that, because this is a running theme. I interview people that already have the wealth. So a lot of the times, while some listeners want tactics and tips, a lot of the times it's more about, okay, what is our legacy going to be? And how do we even figure out what that is? I'm assuming it aligns with your what, and that's sort of the whole point. But how can you define what legacy you want to leave in terms of that you think are enough? Do you know what I mean? If you already have the wealth, you already have the stuff, what are we defining it as? Impact? Or tell me a little more about how we define that.
Yeah, and believe me, I totally get it. And there's obviously folks who will have, and I've had this conversation numerous times on our show with people about, well, look, I mean, obviously you've made the money, so of course money isn't important,
Yeah,
right? You
exactly.
you have, talk to somebody
It's
who's
easy to
trying to figure out,
say for
right?
you.
Try to,
Yeah.
yeah, talk to somebody who's trying to figure out where their next meal is going to come from.
Yeah.
You're going to have a very different conversation, right? So, on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, obviously we have to take care of the baseline, the stages, if you will, of that hierarchy first, before we can start looking at legacy and impact and so on. But from the work that I have done with people over the years, and what I've seen in the networks and the community of people that I typically play with, what I have seen is that the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. In terms of most of the people that I find who are the happiest are doing something that makes them a ton of money, but feels very fulfilling in the process. So I don't push people to create something where the two are mutually exclusive. I believe that you should be paid extraordinarily well for what comes, most naturally to you, and that you don't have to succumb to life as a starving artist simply because you're compelled to draw.
I used to be an artist and I was like, artists don't make any money. So then I switched to computers and then I was like, I'm not very happy. Okay, great, right? I've done all the trajectories and I never would have guessed in a million years that I would be doing what I am now. So
Yeah,
it's tough, especially as you're younger and you don't have the experience trying to figure out, but it's an all evolutionary path, right? So as you
yeah.
learn and as you get data and you're like, don't like that, do like this, don't like that, do like this, want
Which
more money or
is
don't.
Yeah, which is exactly why I believe that you have to go on concurrent paths, where you literally have to just do a few different things, often at the same time, to figure out what it is that you really enjoy doing. Because oftentimes, just by simply doing those various things, I mean, like you could think you want to play baseball and like that's your thing, but reality is, when you take into account spring training, 162 games, all of that travel, the postseason if you make it, and so on. I mean, baseball, it's a great game, but do you really want to be doing that every single day? Which is why when I take people through the exercise of really figuring out what their core gift is. Now, there's an exercise called the 7 seeds of your soul, and there are a few different questions that run against kind of a couple of checklists that you have to cross reference. But a couple of the questions that are there include, would doing this inspire me, every single day? And does this come as naturally to me as breathing, right? And oftentimes, just those two questions alone eliminate a lot of those things that on the surface you might say, yeah, that would be great to do every single day. But when you really think about it, does that inspire you? Is that something you would, be fired up to do every single day? And oftentimes the answer is, yeah, not really.
Okay, so and that's the thing with people, especially people that feel stuck in day jobs, right? And so it's like, where's the transition? I remember telling my best friend she wanted to quit her day job and become a dog walker and dog sitter and stuff like that, right? And I was like, okay, great. She loves animals, but you would think, right? Makes sense. And then I'm like, well, test it first. Like, you want to date it before you marry it, right? Just in case. And
Yeah.
she hated it because the hours were all at nighttime, right? And
That's
it's
picking up a
not.
lot of poop.
Yeah, exactly,
That's
right?
a lot of poop.
when
Yeah.
you actually get in there, you're like, never mind. But that's the thing that I find most don't talk about, that we should try lots of things so that way we do know what we like and what we don't like in reality, instead of just, oh, I think I'd love it, and then we idolize it as if it will be the best thing in the world, and then you
Yeah.
get down there and you're like, oh, poop
Yeah.
smells, that's not good, I don't like this every day.
Yeah, it's interesting. I in the book we talk about the transition, which is going, and that's the exact term that I use, which is going from that day job into making what it is that you're truly fired up to do the primary source of your income, right? So it's something that you can make, that you can really cut the rope and jump into that on a full-time basis. But what is interesting to me is, most people feel like they can, they have to do one or the other. Like they have to jump, both feet in. I want to be fully committed to this. But fact is, you could wake up at 5 instead of 7:30. You could stay up till midnight instead of going to bed at 11. You can use your weekends. You can do all of this. A lot of hours in the day where we can devote towards what it is that we believe we are truly compelled to do. And if you think about it like a recipe mixture, where right now 0% of your income is derived from what it is that you're truly fired up to do, or your what, if we're using that terminology, and 100% of your income is derived from your day job, then if you start using some of those off hours and you follow Jamie's advice, or you build a funnel, I mean, whatever these things are for you, and some money starts to flow in, and now 1% of your income is derived from what it is that you're truly fired up to do, and 99% is derived from what you don't. Just watch that mixture, if you will, where now it gets to 580, 95 and 1090 and 2080, et cetera, et cetera. And eventually it'll get to the point where you'll know when you can, in fact, cut the rope. And for some of you, it may need to be 100%. It may need to be 100% of your current income before you can cut that rope. For others, you may find that it could be 50% of your current income. And this really is where I believe you have to sit down and give serious consideration to what it is that you want versus what it is that you actually need. And so when you think about it from that standpoint, you may want to have a nice 2-bedroom apartment that's, $2,200 a month. But what you need is a studio apartment that's $750, right? You may want to have that nice car that adds up with insurance and gas and parking and everything else to, $1,000 a month. And you can get away with Ubering it for the next 6 months, at $500 a month or whatever it might be. So just really getting clear on what it is that you want versus what it is that you need. If you've got a $5,000 monthly nut and you can get that down to $3,000, you've just cut that transitionary period down by 40%. That's a big difference. I mean, it's 4 years to 2 year and 3/4, right? I mean, it's whatever it is, 2 years. My math is bad, but the point being, you can cut that transition down by a ton.
And we love that your math is bad and you're very successful. We love that part too. So that's all in your book also, because I get asked that question a lot, and I have pieces in my book also, but I don't think anybody actually does this part. Like in my head, I'm like, I am very stubborn and I want everything now as much as humanly possible. So when I transitioned, I was like, what's the smallest amount I can possibly manage? Cut everything, and was willing to sell the house, was willing to sell everything. We literally almost sold everything. Just so that way I didn't have to do this anymore, because I'm impatient and I just wanted it then. And I see a lot of people not willing to do that. And I'm like, I don't know where, and most aren't, especially if they have kids. I didn't have kids. Well, I did kind of at the time, but not being able to see that.
Did you get rid of that kid, or we don't anymore? That kid's gone. Right?
I was pregnant, so I was kind of like, I'm not really sure how that works.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, if that's the case, they don't really want it.
Ooh, I like it. Good. Say more about that, because they need to hear that.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's like there comes a point in time where you just stop talking and you just literally go out and do. And most people, find it much, much easier just to talk and lay out all the reasons why they can't do X, Y, or Z, or they can't do it in this time frame or in the way that they want to do it, or any of these things. And in my way of thinking, it's just because they're deathly afraid of it actually coming to fruition. They're deathly afraid of what their life would actually look like if they didn't have that net, to be able to fall back on. And reality is I'm facing that right now. And just being completely transparent here, for the past 2.5 years, I've been embroiled in a pretty nasty lawsuit where in March of 2016, they actually walked into court because I had inadequate representation that I was unaware of. The plaintiff walked into court and got a summary judgment in the amount of $7.2 million against me. Like final. No, you can't argue it. It is exactly as it's written on paper. This is a judgment against you in the amount of $7.2 million. And I didn't know this was going on. I had no clue. I live in San Diego. This was a case that was back in Chicago, which I had lived there up until 2014. And I thought I was being adequately represented in Chicago. And in March of 2016, they were able to enforce that judgment against me here in California, which basically means that they had a receiver assigned to everything that I owned and froze all of my bank accounts.
Wow.
Just like woke up one day, typical day, was sending out a wire to someone, working on some business stuff, and the wire came back, and I was like, "What on earth happened? Why would the wire bounce back?" And the bank sent me a letter saying you need to talk to this person, and I was completely blindsided by the whole thing. Now, fortunately, we've been able to work through it, and it will be a very expensive lesson, but it's been settled. I've made the payment, a very expensive lesson. But, reality is for the better part of almost 2 years now. I mean, 2.5 years is when the judgment was first issued, about, year and a half, 2 years since all of the assets went into receivership. For the better part of this period of time, it's been honestly an interesting little crutch where I've been able to use that as an excuse for not doing more. And it's this odd feeling now of being out from under that and knowing that I really have no excuse now in terms of not being able to perform, right? Like I could look at that and go, this is why I can't do this, or this is why I can't do that, because this judgment is in place. The assets are in receivership. And now I don't have that excuse anymore, and it's interesting how it's like, oh shoot, now what? Now I actually have to do something again. It's interesting how the human psyche works, but sometimes that's my point, that sometimes, we say we want something, and I've been talking a good game over the last couple of years of all the things that I would do if this wasn't going on. And now I'm under the gun to actually bring some of that to fruition. So it's interesting how the mind works.
I love the transparency though, because no one would have called that bluff, right? No, in general, I think in life, it's one thing to be like, oh, I have a day job and it's safe. And people can be like, yeah, but that's all excuses. That's a really valid excuse, a really, really valid excuse.
It's a valid excuse, but it's also interesting to see, it's an interesting exercise in survival on how I was able to not just survive, but really have a very, very profitable 18 to 20 months here.
Really? Okay. And your
Really?
mindset was fun. Because usually when I chat with people, one of my friends is like, you're not really a successful entrepreneur till you've been sued a couple of times, right? And nobody likes hearing that, right? And I'm like, oh, great, this is going to be awesome. I can't wait.
The other litmus test there, real quick, is if the TV cameras come into your office rolling with like, hey, can we ask you some questions? That would be the other thing, which I've also had happen. So yeah, that's.
So tell me about, because I need this info. I know we need to start wrapping up, but I need this information. How does your mindset get past all of that? I know in general it was blindsided, but like, how do you continue thinking as big as, like, why even bother if you're, you know what I mean? If that's just going to be taken away from you.
Yep. It's a great question, and my answer would be that if you do, look, if you've done something once, I believe that you can always replicate that success. Now, I look back on some of the things that I've done in my career, and I don't even recognize the person that did that. Like it wasn't me. Like who actually did that? Like I think about some of the things that I have done, and now trying to do those things is like overwhelming, or like I don't even know how. It's the strangest thing. But I think ultimately the mindset around it has to be, no matter what you have on paper, no matter what it is that people say about you or believe about you, you have to know in your heart of hearts who you truly are. And if you know in your heart that you are powerful, that you are capable, that you are enough and that you are the solution to someone else's problem, and they are literally waiting for you to show up in their life right now, you'll find a way to reach them.
And it all goes back to your core mission and legacy, and it really put you to the test on all of that. So you're walking the talk that you're telling everybody else to do, which is very impressive.
Yeah, for sure. And what's the other option, right? I mean, I think you just saw the young man and the dogs out there, right? And I mean, we live a great life. I'm not going to sit here and say that we don't. I mean, we've got a beautiful home in San Diego, and the wife and I have been married for over 20 years, and we got two great kids, albeit as every parent has challenges. We've got our challenges, but it's a pretty good go. And I don't want to go back to not having this type of life. There are a lot of people who say, "Oh, you don't need this, you don't need that, this, that, and the other." I may not need it, but I sure like it.
Yep, the distinction is clear. It doesn't mean that I don't want it.
Right. And so I'm not going to sit here and apologize for what I have, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't want what I have. And so reality for me is we have to decide what it is that we truly want. And for right now, what I truly want is to be able to maintain the lifestyle that I've been able to create, which albeit is not, Lear jets and Lamborghinis. But again, it goes back to what it is that you want versus what it is that you need. And right now I have everything that I want, and I'm not willing to give that up.
I love this. And I love the openness, and thank you, and the trajectory that we went down. Thank you so much. I know we have to start wrapping up, and it goes from amazing legacy talk to what's the action that we're going to go do. But it all is a series of actions, right? Whatever we're doing. So what's one action listeners can take this week to help move them forward towards their goal of 1 million? And I might even say million plus legacy for you.
Right. Pre-tax or post-tax. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
Now it's, I mean, the one step that I would say is do whatever it is that you need to do to get to the answers that allow you to create a plan, to create a vision of where it is that you want to be in X amount of time. Because most of us don't have, and I'm not talking like a vision board. I mean, a vision board is great to have something like that. But I mean, specifically, put a time frame on it of what it is that you want by when. And even if you just have that one sentence down, 1 million in the bank in 5 years, and you put that on your monitor or on your computer or whatever it is, and every action that you take leads you towards that goal, towards that objective, you're going to be amazed at what happens. And so I think it really just is, but something that is attainable. For the love of God, make it attainable. I hate, the entrepreneurs who sit there and they go, I want to impact 1 million entrepreneurs in the next 10 years. No, how about 1,000? Just have real impact on 1,000 people over the next 10 years, 100 people a year. You'd be amazed at what that effect has, on the world. So whatever it is, just make it attainable, but write it down and put it somewhere so that you actually do know where you're headed. And then you can back into what the profit path is that you can take and create to get there.
Focus. So important. Thank you so much for coming on today. And everybody should go pick up his book, especially if anybody wants to quit their day job in general, but for everybody else that has a business also and can figure out the rest of their key factors so they're happier, because that is so important. Tell us where else we can find more about you, getting the book, because I don't think I mentioned that before, but also on New Media Summit. Yeah,
and I'll make it super easy for you in terms of the book. As far as the book is concerned, because we actually give the entire book away for free. So you can go to whatisyourwhat.com and you can grab a copy of the entire book. So yeah, I'd love for you to grab that. And if the New Media Summit seems like an event that you want to find out more information about, and come join me and hopefully Jaime and others that will be there, where you'll have a chance to meet with the world's leading podcasters and pitch us on who you are and what you do, and leave the event with bookings in hand. Then definitely go to newmediasummit.net.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. So amazing to actually connect with you for real this time and know more about you for reals. Have an amazing day, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you consider yourself a high-level entrepreneur? Now, most likely, if you're listening to this, You definitely are. And what I've heard over and over and over again is it's hard to find like-minded people that are like that too. Again, I'm from Maine, so I totally understand how difficult it can be. Thank goodness I have an amazing online community, so I know tons of them. And that is exactly why we are starting this brand new mastermind group with high-level, like-minded entrepreneurs, the ones that you know you can go alongside with that will help move you to the next level, let alone with kick butt coaching from me, because I like to slap you around, both on focus and on strategy. So if you're looking to double or triple this year, which I know most of you are, I want you to go ahead and apply and see if it's a good fit for you. I will totally tell you if it's not and if I wouldn't do it if I were you. But go to eventualmillionaire.com/apply. We are looking for amazing, like-minded entrepreneurs. My previous mastermind members have told me it is life changing. So take the time today, fill out the very quick application, and we'll see if it's a fit. Take care.